Adanna's hands froze on the marble countertop when she heard the words. She had cleaned the penthouse suite of the Grand Seoul Hotel for 3 months, scrubbing toilets and polishing floors while sending everyone back to her sick mother in Lagos. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared her for the moment when Park Ji-hoon, the youngest CEO in South Korea's tech industry, stumbled through his hotel room door at 2 in the morning with desperation painted across his impossibly handsome face. He wasn't drunk. That would have made sense. This was something else entirely. His designer suit was wrinkled, his normally perfect hair disheveled, and his eyes held a wildness that made Adanna grip her cleaning cart like a shield. She knew the rules. Invisible. Silent. Gone before the guests even knew she existed. That was how a Nigerian woman survived as a maid in Seoul, especially one whose visa was hanging by a thread after her agency had suddenly shut down. But Ji-hoon looked right at her, really looked at her, for the first time since she'd been assigned to his floor. And what he said next shattered every boundary she'd carefully constructed around her heart. "I need you to kiss me. Just 10 seconds. Please." The please was what got her. Men like him didn't say please to women like her. Adanna clutched the edge of her cart, her mind racing through 1,000 possibilities, none of them good. Was this a trap? Test. She'd heard stories about women in her position, the things they were pressured to do, the promises that turned to ash. But something in his voice wasn't predatory. It was broken. "Mr. Park, I should go," she managed in her careful Korean, the accent she'd worked so hard to soften still evident in every syllable. She was already backing toward the door when he held up his phone, and she saw the headline that had clearly destroyed him. Park Jae-hoon's engagement to chaebol heiress confirmed, wedding in 3 months. "I have 2 hours to post a photo that proves that article is a lie, or my father will destroy everything I've built." His voice cracked. "My company, my freedom, my life. He's orchestrated this entire engagement, and if I don't give the media something bigger, something more shocking, I'll be married to a woman I don't love by spring." Adanna's heart hammered. She knew about family duty. She knew about impossible choices. But this. "Why me?" "Because you're real." The words came out like a confession. "Because every woman in my world is another chess piece in my father's game. Because I've watched you for 3 months singing Afrobeats under your breath while you clean, and you're the only genuine person in my entire life." He'd noticed her. The thought sent an electric shock through her system that she immediately tried to suppress. This was dangerous territory. But as she looked at this man, this powerful CEO reduced to begging his maid, she saw something she recognized. A gilded cage that looked different from hers but trapped just as tight. 10 seconds, she heard herself whisper. "And then you never ask me for anything again." The relief that flooded his face should have warned her. Should have told her that 10 seconds was just the beginning. But Adanna had always been too brave for her own good, and as Ji-hoon closed the distance between them, his hand trembling as it cupped her face with a gentleness that shocked her, she made a choice that would change everything. Their lips met, and the camera flash from his phone captured the moment that would explode across every news site in South Korea by dawn. The moment that would make her the most hated woman in Seoul. The moment that would turn her invisible existence into a spotlight she never wanted. But what the photo couldn't capture was the way 10 seconds turned into 15, 20, 30. The way his kiss tasted like desperation and hope. The way Adanna's heart betrayed every practical instinct she'd ever had. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Ji-hoon's phone was already buzzing with notifications. He'd posted it, tagged it. The caption read, "The only woman I'll ever marry. The world can know the truth now." Adanna's blood turned to ice. "What have you done?" But she already knew. He just declared war on his family, on society, on every rule that kept people like them in separate worlds. And he'd used her as his weapon. The question was, would she survive the blast? By sunrise, Adanna's face was everywhere. The hotel's head manager appeared at her tiny shared apartment in Itaewon before she'd even processed what had happened. Her expression colder than a Seoul winter. She was fired, effective immediately. Security would escort her out. The agency that had arranged her work visa was threatening legal action for moral misconduct. Her roommates, 3 other African women working as English teachers and factory workers, stared at her with a mixture of horror and sympathy as she packed her belongings into 2 battered suitcases. "You kissed Park Ji-hoon." Chisholm, her closest friend, whispered in Igbo. "Adanna, do you know what you've done?" But Adanna couldn't answer because she didn't know. 10 seconds had detonated her entire life. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing with blocked numbers. The comments online were vicious. "Gold digger. She trapped him. Send the African back where she came from." The racism was naked, ugly, relentless. She was shoving her last belongings into her suitcase when the knock came. Not the police, as she'd feared. Worse, Ji-hoon himself, flanked by 2 men in suits who screamed private security, standing in the narrow hallway of her building like a prince who'd wandered into the wrong kingdom. The other residents gawked. Phones appeared, capturing every second. Adanna wanted to disappear into the cracked linoleum floor. "We need to talk," Ji-hoon said, and his voice carried that same desperate edge from the night before, but now it was wrapped in something else. Determination. She should have slammed the door in his face. Instead, she let him in, ignoring Chisholm's warning look. The apartment was barely large enough for the 4 women who shared it, and Ji-hoon looked absurdly out of place among the cramped bunks and hot plate that served as their kitchen. "I'm going to fix this," he said immediately. "Fix this." Adanna's voice rose, her careful composure cracking. "I've lost everything. My job, my visa, my reputation. There's no fixing this. I have 2 weeks before they deport me, and I can't go back to Nigeria with nothing. My mother needs surgery. My siblings need school fees. You've destroyed me for your family drama. That's why you were sending all your money home." His face transformed with guilt. "I didn't know. I didn't think." "No, you didn't think. Rich people never do." The words were acid. "You saw a prop, not a person. Not someone with a whole life that you just burned to the ground." The silence stretched between them, heavy with truths they'd both been avoiding. Then Ji-hoon did something that shocked her more than the kiss. He bowed, a full 90-degree bow of deep respect and apology, something a CEO never did for a maid. "You're right. I used you. But I can make this right." He straightened, and his eyes held a wild plan that made her nervous. "Marry me. For real." Adanna actually laughed, the sound brittle and sharp. "You're insane. I'm serious. My father's weapon is the engagement to Choi Minaseo. If we're already married, legally married, he can't force me into anything. And you'll have legal status, money for your family, protection from deportation. A business arrangement." The words tasted bitter. "A partnership." He stepped closer, and despite everything, despite the disaster he'd created, Adanna felt that same pull from the night before. "You need security. I need freedom. We can help each other." It was insane. Completely insane. But as Adanna looked at her suitcases, at the reality of returning to Lagos empty-handed, at her mother's medical bills that grew larger every day, she felt the walls closing in. Sometimes the only choice was which cage you locked yourself into. 1 year, she heard herself say. "We stay married for 1 year. You support my family, help me get permanent residency, and then we divorce quietly. And you never, ever lie to me again." The smile that broke across Ji-hoon's face was like sunrise, and it terrified her how much she wanted to see it again. 1 year, he agreed, extending his hand. When Adanna shook it, she felt the trap snap shut. But this time she'd walked in with her eyes open. The question was whether she'd walk out with her heart intact. The wedding happened 48 hours later in a courthouse, with only witnesses required by law. No flowers, no family, no fairy tale. Just 2 signatures that bound Adanna to a man she barely knew and a country that didn't want her. Ji-hoon's lawyer had expedited everything, greased every bureaucratic wheel with the efficiency that only serious money could buy. One moment she was facing deportation. The next, she was Mrs. Park. The name felt like wearing someone else's skin. The media storm that followed was biblical. Ji-hoon's father, Park Dae-young, a titan of Seoul's business elite, released a statement disowning his son. The Choi family, humiliated by the broken engagement, threatened lawsuits. But the worst came from the public. Adanna's face was plastered everywhere with captions that made her stomach turn. The maid who stole Korea's prince. African gold digger traps billionaire. What was he thinking? Ji-hoon moved her into his penthouse immediately. The same room she'd once cleaned, now her prison and sanctuary. The apartment was all glass walls and minimalist design, beautiful and cold, nothing like the warm chaos of her family home in Lagos. She wandered the spaces like a ghost, touching expensive things she'd once scrubbed, trying to reconcile the maid who'd existed in these rooms with the wife who now claimed them. "You don't have to hide," Ji-hoon said one evening, finding her standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring at Seoul's glittering skyline. He'd given her space for 3 days, sleeping in the guest room, treating her with a careful courtesy that somehow felt worse than anger. "I'm not hiding. I'm thinking about how I got here." Adanna didn't turn around. 3 months ago I was scrubbing your toilet. Now I'm your wife. You don't find that strange. I find it honest." He moved beside her, and she could feel the warmth of him even without touching. "Every woman in my world wanted me for my name, my money, my connections. You didn't want anything from me. That's why I noticed you. I wanted you not to see me at all." The admission came out raw. "Do you know what it's like, being invisible? I've been in Korea for 2 years, and before you, no one really looked at me. I was furniture. The help. And now," her voice broke, "now everyone sees me, and they hate what they see." Ji-hoon's hand found hers, his fingers threading through in a gesture that felt too natural, too right. "I see you. The woman who sings while she works because it makes the time pass faster. Who sends every penny home even though she lives on ramen. Who's brave enough to kiss a stranger because he was desperate. I see you, Adanna, and I don't hate what I see." She should have pulled away. This was a business arrangement. 1 year and done. But when she finally turned to look at him, she saw the same loneliness she carried, just wrapped in expensive clothes. 2 people trapped in boxes they didn't choose, trying to find a door. "Your father called today," she said instead, needing to break the moment before it overwhelmed her. "He wants to meet me." The warmth drained from Ji-hoon's face. "No. Absolutely not. We can't avoid him forever. He's your father. He's a tyrant who's controlled every aspect of my life since I was born." The bitterness was sharp. "The schools I attended, the friends I kept, the company I built. He's had his hands in all of it. This marriage is the first choice I've made that was truly mine." Was it, though? The question hung between them. Or was I just another form of rebellion? "Your father wanted you to marry the Choi heiress, so you married the African maid. The most shocking, unacceptable choice you could make. Am I freedom or just a different kind of weapon?" Ji-hoon flinched like she'd struck him. "Is that what you think?" "I don't know what to think." Adanna's voice was tired. "But I know we need to face him eventually. And I know that running only works until you hit a wall." The meeting was arranged for the following evening at the Park family estate, a sprawling compound in Gangnam that spoke of old money and older power. Adanna dressed carefully in a hanbok that Ji-hoon's stylist had procured, the traditional Korean dress a calculated gesture of respect. But as their car pulled up to the estate, she felt the weight of the performance, the impossibility of winning a game whose rules she didn't fully understand. Park Dae-young was waiting in a receiving room that could have housed Adanna's entire Lagos neighborhood. He was older than she'd expected, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with a kind of presence that commanded boardrooms and crushed opponents. He looked at her like she was dirt on his expensive carpet. "So you're the woman who's destroyed my son's future." His Korean was crisp, each word a blade. "I'm the woman your son chose to marry." Adanna kept her voice steady, even as her heart hammered. "With respect, sir, Ji-hoon is a grown man capable of making his own decisions." "Decisions?" His laugh was cold. He's a child throwing a tantrum. And you're the toy he's using to punish me. When he's bored, and he will get bored, where will you be? Back in Africa, humiliated with nothing. The cruelty was breathtaking in its precision. But Adanna had grown up navigating Lagos streets, had survived Korean xenophobia, had learned to stand tall when people tried to make her small. She met his eyes without flinching. Perhaps. But right now I'm his wife. And I'll stand with him until he tells me otherwise. Something flickered in Dae-young's expression. Surprise, maybe respect, she couldn't tell. Then it hardened again. You have no idea what you've stepped into. The Choi family is threatening to pull their investments from Park Industries. The board wants Ji-hoon removed as CEO. Your little love story is costing him everything. Adanna's blood went cold. Ji-hoon hadn't told her this part. Hadn't told her that their marriage was burning down more than just his relationship with his father. And when she looked at him, saw the guilt written across his face, she understood. He'd known. He'd known what this would cost and married her anyway. The question was, had he done it for love or for revenge? The car ride back to the penthouse was silent, tension thick enough to choke on. Adanna stared out the window at Seoul's neon-lit streets, each passing light a reminder of how foreign this world still felt. When they finally reached the apartment, she walked straight to the windows that had become her refuge, arms wrapped around herself like she could hold the pieces together through sheer will. You lied to me. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the space between them. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell me that marrying me would destroy your company. She whirled to face him. That you'd lose everything you'd built. Ji-hoon, that's not a partnership. That's martyrdom. And I never asked you to sacrifice yourself for me. I'm not sacrificing myself. His composure finally cracked. Don't you understand? That company, my position, all of it, it was never really mine. It was another cage my father built. Board members he appointed. Strategies he approved. I was a puppet CEO, and I was suffocating. So you decided to burn it all down, and I'm the match you struck. The realization was bitter. Your father was right. I'm your rebellion, not your choice. That's not true. Ji-hoon closed the distance between them, and his intensity made her breath catch. Maybe it started that way. Maybe I saw you as an escape route. But Adanna, these past days, watching you navigate this nightmare with grace, standing up to my father when no one else ever has, singing Tiwa Savage in the shower when you think I can't hear. His voice dropped to something raw and unguarded. You're not my rebellion. You're my reality. The first real thing in my choreographed life. Adanna wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him. But she'd built her survival on practical truths, not beautiful lies. Words are easy, Ji-hoon. What happens when reality gets hard? When you actually lose your company? When your father cuts you off completely? When you wake up one morning and resent me for everything you gave up? Then we'll face it. He took her hands and his were shaking. Together. Isn't that what marriage means? This isn't a real marriage. But even as she said it, the words felt hollow. Because somewhere between the courthouse signatures and standing beside him against his father, something had shifted. The lines she'd drawn so carefully were blurring. Her phone buzzed, destroying the moment. A message from her mother in Lagos, sent through her sister because her mother was still too weak post-surgery to type. The surgery Ji-hoon had paid for. The message was simple. Tell your husband thank you. And tell my daughter I'm proud of her courage. Adanna's eyes burned. Her mother didn't know this was fake. Didn't know about the one-year arrangement, the business transaction. She thought her daughter had found love in a foreign land. Had fought for something real. My mother thinks this is real, she whispered. Maybe it should be. Ji-hoon's words were barely audible. Maybe we stop pretending we're pretending. Before Adanna could respond, before she could process what he was offering, his phone exploded with notifications. Both their phones. The news alert flashed across every screen. Exclusive Park Jae-hoon's secret revealed. Wife was his housekeeper. Intimate photos leaked. Someone had sold their story to the press. Photos of Adanna in her cleaning uniform, pushing her cart through the hotel hallways. Photos of her and Ji-hoon from security cameras. Him entering his suite, her leaving shortly after. The timeline, the context, everything arranged to make it look like the sordid affair his father had probably always planned to paint it as. This was your father. Adanna felt numb. He's destroying us. No. Ji-hoon's face had gone hard, transformed into something she'd never seen before. Not the desperate man who'd begged for a kiss, not the vulnerable son facing his father, but the CEO who'd built a tech empire before 30. He's just shown his hand. And now I know exactly how to win. He pulled out his laptop, fingers flying across keys. My father thinks he controls the narrative because he controls the traditional media. But I control something more powerful. The entire digital infrastructure his precious Park Industries runs on. Every server, every database, every line of code. It's all my work, my design. And I'm about to show him what happens when you threaten what's mine. Ji-hoon, what are you doing? Making a choice. A real one. He looked up at her, and his eyes held a fierce clarity. I'm going to release every detail of my father's business practices. The tax evasion, the exploitation of workers, the bribes to government officials. Everything I've quietly documented for years. And then I'm going to resign from Park Industries, take my actual innovations and start fresh. With you if you'll still have me. The audacity of it stole her breath. He was going to war with his own family, burning every bridge, risking everything. For what? Justice? Freedom? Or for her? Why? The question came out broken. Why would you do this? Ji-hoon's smile was sad and beautiful and terrifying. Because for the first time in my life, I understand what my mother never taught me before she died. That love isn't about control or duty or maintaining appearances. It's about choosing someone every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. He stood, crossed to her, cupped her face with a tenderness that made her heart ache. I choose you, Adanna. Not as rebellion, not as escape. But as my partner, my equal, my home. And there, in that glass tower above Seoul, with the city lights witnessing their truth, Adanna finally let herself fall. She kissed him, and this time it wasn't for 10 seconds or for cameras or for anything except the terrifying, exhilarating feeling of choosing to trust, to hope, to love. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Ji-hoon's finger was hovering over the enter key that would release everything, that would change both their lives forever. Are you sure? Adanna whispered. I've never been more sure of anything. And he pressed send. The explosion was immediate and catastrophic. Park Dae-young's empire, built on decades of carefully maintained respectability, crumbled under the weight of truth. Government investigations launched. Business partners fled. The Choi family, scrambling to distance themselves from the scandal, withdrew all threats. And Ji-hoon, true to his word, resigned from Park Industries before they could fire him. The media that had vilified Adanna pivoted overnight. Now she was the woman who'd given a man courage to stand up to corruption. The Cinderella story the internet loved. But Adanna knew better than to trust the fickleness of public opinion. She'd been the villain yesterday. She could be again tomorrow. What mattered was the man beside her, working 18-hour days in their apartment-turned-office, coding the foundation of his new company. Not Park Industries 2.0, but something entirely his own. A tech startup focused on bridging communication gaps between Africa and Asia, using AI to break down language barriers. He'd asked for her insight, her experience, making her not just his wife but his true partner. Her mother's surgery was successful. Her siblings' school fees were paid. And slowly, carefully, Adanna was building something she'd never had in Korea. Community. Other African women in Seoul, other immigrants navigating impossible systems, found her through social media. She started a blog, sharing her story, the truth of it, not the fairy tale version. The response was overwhelming. 3 months after the scandal broke, Ji-hoon's new company secured its first major investment. 6 months after, they were profitable. And through it all, Adanna watched him transform from the desperate man who'd begged for a kiss into someone grounded, purposeful, free. "We made it," Ji-hoon said one evening, pulling her into his arms as they stood at those same floor-to-ceiling windows. Seoul sprawled below them, no longer foreign, no longer hostile, just home. "We made it," Adanna agreed. But then she pulled back, studying his face. "But I need to know something. The one-year arrangement, are we still doing that? Do you want your freedom back?" Ji-hoon's laugh was pure joy. "Freedom? Adanna, you are my freedom. Every day with you is freedom. So no, I don't want our arrangement back. I want a real marriage. Messy and complicated and real. I want to meet your family in Lagos. I want to learn to make your grandmother's jollof rice. I want to fight about whose turn it is to do dishes and make up in all the ways that matter." His voice softened. "I want forever if you'll have me." Tears streamed down Adanna's face, but they were good tears, healing tears. "I want that too. All of it. The messy, complicated, beautiful reality of us." Their kiss this time was nothing like that first desperate meeting. This was promise and partnership, passion and peace. This was two people who'd walked through fire and chosen each other on the other side. Outside, Seoul's lights twinkled like stars, and somewhere in Lagos, Adanna's mother was strong again. Her siblings were thriving, and a girl who'd once felt invisible was finally, gloriously seen. The one-year arrangement had become a lifetime choice. And as Ji-hoon lifted Adanna into his arms, carrying her toward their bedroom with laughter echoing through the penthouse, she realized that sometimes the best love stories don't start with a fairy tale. They start with 10 seconds of courage and two people brave enough to see each other truly. Did this story touch your heart? Hit that subscribe button right now because you're part of this family. And we have so many more incredible love stories crossing cultures, breaking barriers, and proving that real love recognizes no borders. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from: Lagos, Seoul, somewhere in between. Let's build this community together. And don't forget to hit that notification bell because next week's story features a Jamaican artist and a Japanese surgeon in a romance that will absolutely blow your mind. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Subscribe now, and let's keep celebrating love in all its beautiful, complicated, real forms. See you in the next one.